and welcome folks, Wizuko here. If you know me, you know I love Bojack Horseman. It's my favorite cartoon of all time. There is no other show I've seen that often, over and over. And if you haven't seen it yet, I'd highly recommend. Like, I've never recommended anything ever before in my life. Check it out. If you like adult cartoons with gut-punching twists, you gonna love this show. The thing is though, the show is over. With the last part of season 6 that released on 31st January 2020, the show ended with a season finale that, in my opinion, honored the show perfectly, I think. Without spoiling it, it was a very fitting end that ended the show perfectly. And yet, as it goes for every fan with their favorite show ends, you still kinda long for more. Even though you know there won't and there shouldn't be, you still kinda want more. And thankfully, we don't care for that on this channel. Last time, we imagined what a good Avatar video game could be like. And this time, I want to pitch to you my best idea of a Bojack Horseman video game adaptation. We're gonna discuss the genre, graphics, gameplay, and the potential story this fictional game's gonna have. And if you have any ideas that I have not thought of yet, or maybe ideas that add on to mine, I'd love to hear those too. So, with all that said, let's get into it and let's imagine a Bojack Horseman game. Here's my pitch. Okay, the genre of a game is the basis of a game. And when the game is an adaptation of a show, the genre should reflect the show it is based on. So before deciding on a genre for the game, I think it would make sense to break down the show a little. What is the core of Bojack Horseman? Well, whenever someone asks me to describe Bojack Horseman as shortest as I could, I came up with this. Bojack Horseman is like a car accident. It gets worse any second, and you kinda want to do something about it, but you can see everything just in slow-mo. Everything's going to shit, but you just can't do anything about it. And I still think that description kinda works as a brief one, since Bojack is all about the consequences of actions. Most commonly, there are no consequences for the actions of cartoon characters, which creates a huge contrast between the typical expectations people that like to watch cartoons have and what Bojack is really about.
And that's a Sharpie.
Also, I think it's important to have a look at how episodes are built up in the show as well. To put the emphasis on consequences, I think it is crucial to have a story that not only explores the consequences, but also explains the inner world of a character well enough to give the audience the chance to understand how and why characters would decide the way they would.
Well, that was another in a long series of regrettable life choices.
Okay. So, we have a focus on story and consequences. Now we need to come up with a game genre that will reflect exactly this. And the first game that came to my mind that I played recently that does basically exactly the same thing was Detroit Become Human.
Oh my god.
The action-adventure game lets you decide what happens next and puts most of its focus on the story and a linear level design. So a higher impact of the story and the consequences of your decisions is possible. Other examples of this genre would be the Telltale series, the Life is Strange series, or the Dark Picture game series. And while Wikipedia and Steam seems to call these games different genres, from action-adventure to just adventure, I'd rather call it an interactive drama, because I kind of feel like that word summarizes the genre a little bit better. But of course, you do you. If you have a better idea for a name of the genre, let me know. So, in any case, I would say that the best genre for a Bojack Horseman game would be an interactive drama, in my logic at least. Okay, now that we have the genre down, what kind of gameplay does that inspire? I picture the game to have our main cast go through their own episodes and have the player decide and navigate through dialogues mainly. I will go more into detail in the next section where we'll be talking about the potential story. But for now, I picture the gameplay to have a linear level design, and you have to explore in a point-and-click adventure kind of way to get impressions of your surroundings as well as background information or little gimmicks or Easter eggs. The environment can give your character insights and maybe even open up new dialogue options. However, the main story will be the driving force that will make you decide and talk to different people to progress. To make the game impactful and give us the feeling that our decisions matter, I would like every episode to have at least 2 different endings. However, to honor the structure of the show, I would want both endings to have a gut punch to it, because much like in the show, there will be no happy endings. More often than not, you are forced to decide for the lesser bad, as this is how things escalate in Bojack often too. You reach a point of no return where either way, you have to lose something. However, I don't just want the game to honor the structure and feel of the show, but also add on to the actual show as well, and that will be the most challenging part of the game. It needs to give us new insights that we did not yet know, but it also shall never ever interfere with the show's canon. But still, it's got to have meaning to the show. So let's go into the real complicated section of the whole pitch, the story. The story will be the most challenging section, but on the other hand, the most viable one. I have my own pitch for this section I want to share with you. However, I could imagine that the writers among you probably have their own ideas as well, and if so, I would love to hear them. Please take your time and share yours. And for all of you out there that didn't watch Bojack yet, this section will contain spoilers for all seasons of Bojack Horseman, and if you don't want to get spoiled, please skip this section. And while you do, here's my pitch for the story. So first off, I have the story before the actual show, for multiple reasons. First, I think the end of Bojack is perfect as it is, and I wouldn't want to compromise it by giving out the future after the show has ended.
Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? Life's a bitch and then you die, right?
Sometimes. Sometimes life's a bitch and then you keep living.
Another reason is because we still have a lot of open questions about our characters' pasts and don't have exact ideas of what happened that led to certain things. To get more into detail, that's pretty much how I imagined the story to set off. We would play Bojack, Princess Carolyn, Diane, Mr. Peanut Butter, and maybe Todd? Each living through an episode dedicated to their past. More specifically, somewhere at the end of the 80s and the start of the 90s. So, while Diane was still a young girl, going to school, being bullied, Bojack was on the brink of losing Herb as his best friend, Princess Carolyn just arrived in LA, leaving her mom, and became the assistant to Bojack's old agent. Mr. Peanut Butter just got his own show, which is pretty much horsing around. The only thing about Todd here is, he is not yet born, which is why he'll get the shortest section. I have an idea to work around, but more about that later. Ideally, I would want all the episodes to connect with each other, either through a common theme that is repeated over and over in each episode, or by scenes that interconnect with each other, without the characters actually meeting, because the show established how and when the characters meet. I think it would make a lot of sense to start with Mr. Peanut Butter for that reason. Plus, his story can be the most positive one, as he is the bubbly character that doesn't seem to face as many hardships as all the others seem to.
That, dear friends, is where the sit truly hits the con.
So I picture his story where we play as Peanut Butter in his shoes to show us what it was like for him to start his career, and shed some light on how he managed to be relevant in such a small production. I would want him to stay positive and happy-go-lucky, not noticing how fucked up his surroundings are. I could see him confronted with different issues of the time and the production, or rather the business, but being totally oblivious to what is going on. Maybe even as we play Mr. Peanut Butter, we are oblivious until it is too late and we can't stop the tragedy from happening. To get more into detail, I always wondered why, for Bojack, Sarah Lynn was so important even after the show had ended, and he would still be in contact with everyone from the old crew in one way or another. Mr. Peanut Butter, however, didn't seem to have stayed in touch with his old crew at all. Maybe there's a reason for that, and the video game could give us that very reason. Mr. Peanut Butter wanted to make everyone happy, but maybe by trying to make everyone happy, he didn't even realize that he disappointed and even maybe accidentally might have betrayed the girls in the cast maybe? And in the end, all you could choose as the player is how deeply or which one of the two you will leave heartbroken. Those are the questions my pitch would try to answer.
Who wants an autograph?
He's so stupid he doesn't realize how miserable he should be.
Next up, we have PC adjusting to a world she had given up her whole life for, only to find out that it's not how she was expecting it at all. As a woman in a man-dominated business, I could see her story work with a feminist twist. We will play her story from her perspective and work against a rival of some sort. He isn't important to her, but he will be the male counterpart, showing how much more work PC has to put in to receive the same recognition he has. She will have to balance her old life and relationship with her mother with her new work and responsibilities, while being so far away from her also. As the player, we have to decide how PC balances each part, but soon we will have to realize that the task is impossible and that we have to decide for one or the other, which leads to DC losing either her relationship to her mother, her only true relationship with another person, or getting a massive throwback on her career plans, which could explain why she was stuck as an assistant for such a long time. We already know that she will eventually decide in favor of her job, but we don't know why she did and how she learned that she had to push forward so hard. The video game shall answer these questions.
Serves you right for having feelings. Starting now, you are a hard, heartless career gal. Go to work, be awesome at it, and don't waste time on foolish flights of fancy.
Diane's story could be much simpler, giving her a teeny bully story, but sadly without the loving parents. We do know bits and pieces about this time, but I would love to go into detail and have Diane being confronted with her bullies and having to decide whether she wants to stand up for herself and fight, or lets it happen, in hopes it might just end soon. And of course, we would be the ones making the decision here. But as it goes with most bully stories, sometimes it just doesn't really matter if you fight back or not. Either way, the problem will not be solved. The only thing giving her comfort is a show created by a guy that soon will be our main protagonist, Bojack. And that's how I picture her story is gonna connect to Bojack's at least.
I need you in my life.
Really?
You're the biggest asshole I know, and you're the only thing that makes sense to me.
The real deal, however, is going to be Bojack's story. And there we can really go overboard. We will have to balance Bojack's aspirations and career plans with his relationship with her. But due to the influences Bojack has to withstand and his uprising alcoholism, we will reach a point of breaking apart that will be unrecoverable. We know that Bojack and Herb, despite having a lot in common and clearly having great chemistry with each other, are not friends anymore. And they weren't the best friends anymore while still working together. But we just don't know what exactly caused them to drift apart in the first place. And I would love the game to show us how it started to come crushing down on them, and why they grew more and more stranger to each other. Of course, in this case, we already know how it's gotta end. We know that Herb and Bojack are definitely going to be separated. But the video game could leave two options open. Like, imagine, on the one hand, it is our fault. We actively betray Herb in a way, even before the whole thing started when he was outed as gay. Or we just grew apart without actually anything happen between each other. I think that would make a huge difference in their story.
Not sure you get what's happening here. This could be the last time that—
No, I'm not gonna give you closure. You don't get that. You have to live with the shitty thing you did for the rest of your life.
Lastly, we would have the yet unborn Todd, so maybe it would make the most sense to leave him out. But then again, how about we play as Todd's mom? One thing that I felt was not really handled well in the show, and I would have wanted more of, was the Todd family arc. And due to the very difficult relationship Todd had with his stepfather during the show, I would love to see how all that came to be. Maybe Todd's dad left even before Todd was even born, and Helen, Todd's mom, already was seeing Jorge. An argument that weakens that a little is that Todd doesn't address to Jorge as his dad. He calls him by his name, and I feel that if Todd was born and Jorge was already around, he might have gotten used to him as his dad already and would probably call him dad then. But then again, what if Todd's biological father still tried to stay in Todd's life nonetheless? And we can guess from the end of Helen's story that Todd very likely is going to be torn between two homes. That would definitely be a story I could get invested in. And I think exploring a little bit more of the Todd family situation would totally be worth it. I mean, the video game would give us great insight into how the family crumbled and how this immense distance grew. Probably we would have to switch the time for that, but you know what? I think that would be fine. Maybe, looking back at all my stories, it would make more sense to set each story in a different time anyway.
I just wanted her to know that I don't have anything to prove to her, but I got a new job and an apartment, so if I did have something to prove to her, I'd have proven it by now.
So I would call this my overall pitch for the story of the game. Let me know if you'd be interested in a more detailed version of the story. So far, I think you have the general idea of the story I had in mind. I still have a lot of details to get figured out though. But I think for a pitch, this works. Okay, this is going to be a very quick section before the end, because I think Bojack has a very unique and pretty 2D style, and I would not want to swap it out for the world. The puppet-esque movement and flat world design are a huge part of the aesthetic of the show, and one of the reasons why the show is so recognizable as it is. Which is why I would argue that you would take a part of the show's identity if you were to change the way the show looks and is animated. So ideally, I would go for a 2D animated game as well. Reminiscent of the old point-and-click adventure games like Monkey Island and other games of that sort in the earlier days. I think that would both be a good stylistic choice, since the time the game takes place is very much the time period where games in such a style were very prominent, but also very reminiscent of the show itself. And it would underline the whole nostalgia aspect that is a theme that comes up in the show more than just once. I would, however, change up the colors a little bit to give it more of a nostalgic look. I think something more like this would remind me more of the early 90s or late 80s TV color theme. I think the South Park games did a great job on keeping the original style of the show, while at the same time translating it into a 2D game. So I would take them as the biggest role model for inspiration. And that was my pitch for a Bojack Horseman video game. Of course, since I have no idea about organizing stuff or programming, this most likely will never become a reality, but I like to dream sometimes. What about you though? Do you agree with my pitch, or do you have different ideas? Anything to add on to the concept, or maybe just some opinions? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to know. And if you still didn't had enough of me yet, I stream over at Twitch 3 times a week and upload new videos every Wednesday. Thank you so much for watching and making it so far into the video. I would love to see you again. So until I do, have it good. Bye!